All right, thank you. Welcome back to the Maturity Project. I'm your host, Chad Everett Broshears, and today I'm speaking with a wonderful guest, Misty, and I'll have Misty introduce herself, and we'll roll out the conversation from there.
Hi, my name is Misty Tate. I am the owner of Misti Coaches. I'm a 12-year fitness coach, and more recently, over the last 5 to 6 years, an integrative nutrition and holistic health coach in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Fantastic. And holistic. I love that.
Yes.
So, interestingly enough, I'm holistically educated myself through the Czech Institute.
Okay.
I love it when I start meeting people that are into a bigger spectrum of what it takes to be healthy and fit. Far too many people think calorie in, calorie out, the exercises, and that's the end of it, and you're just going to be granted health. And like, well, I think there's a lot more variables that we can take into play.
So much more to it. So much more. And we could go, you could go all day long about that.
Yeah, and I do plan on digging into that a little bit as well. For the audience, and you guys that have followed my work, you know that there's 8 different areas of maturity that I talk about. And of those 8 areas, Misty's going to go over a couple of them with us today. We've talked previous to doing the recording, and her background is definitely somebody that I find a great deal of value in. Just the background alone, then add in the person, and you can see that there's somebody here that actually has something to offer, not just her service as being a trainer and changing your life in the way of your fitness and health. Not at a racetrack, I promise you. But but not just that, but also an in-depth and layered thinking person. You don't get into the holistic approach to anything if you don't have layers of thinking.
Right.
So, if you guys aren't familiar with what layers of thinking is definitely no superficial value. When you talk to us, you hear like, okay, that's a level. Okay, that's kind of deep. Next thing you know, there's another level. It's like, oh no, I'm warming up.
Yes.
And, people are like, wow, you're blowing my socks off. I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, let's go a little bit further. And then before you know it, you're like, I didn't even realize we could go that far into the subject. You're like, I'm not done. We can go further. That's the layers of thinking.
Right.
So, Misty, with what we went over, the 8 areas of maturity for the people that may be new to this video, they are, I'll put them in a number value because it seems to be the best way to get people to fully understand it, or at least qualify some understanding on it, is because most people, when they hear maturity, they just think getting old.
Yes.
That's not really true, right?
Yep.
So
I've met some very young but mature people.
I have been absolutely just floored by some of the young people I run into. I'm like, we used to just use the blanket term "old soul."
Mm-hmm.
Well, sure, if you want to use that, but I say that's a very mature person in that way.
Right. Right. My son, 20 years old, has taught me quite a bit.
What a treasure. Right?
Yes. Yes.
So for the 8 areas, 1 is physical, 2 is community, 3 is cognitive or intelligence, 4 is emotion, 5 is finance, 6 is business, 7 is sexuality, and 8 is spirituality or purpose. So, and I do keep those 2 connected, spirituality, purpose, they're interchangeable for this education. So, of those 8 areas, which one stood out to you that you'd like to speak about today, and then we can kind of dig in a little bit further?
Well, I mean, they're all very interesting, and you and I had a conversation yesterday, and I could talk about every one of them, and I hope we get a chance to do that eventually. But obviously, because I have so much knowledge in the physical maturity space, and by no means am I at the best. I'm not going to brag and say that because I learn every single day about how to be better at what I do, and understanding other people and how I can teach that person where they are, how to become better at, and how to become more mature in physically. And that there's so many things involved in that, and I know we'll get into that. So physical maturity, definitely want to talk about that. Recently started my own business. So about 2 years ago, after being a trainer for 10 years, I was kind of thrust into entrepreneurship. And I wasn't thrilled about it at the time, but I'm really happy about it now, obviously. Now that but I had to learn about maturity in business and what to do and how to the systems and the processes, but then also just how to handle all the things that come along with that. So I'm interested in that. I'm learning, and I'm nowhere near anywhere of an expert there. So I would love to talk more about it. Let's see. Finance is something I'm really interested in right now too. All my YouTube channels. I listen to YouTube every morning while I'm getting ready for work. So, and I thought, my YouTube is just full of it's been health and wellness up until this point. I'm like, wait a minute. You know all that already. Like, why are you listening to the same stuff over and over again? So then I started searching out other channels like your channel and other things. Who can I learn from? This is something different. So finance became one of them because I'm not well versed in that, but I'm getting better. So I think that kind of goes along with my business, and so those are things that I'm working on myself, but not an expert in. And then the fourth one, I'm drawn to the sexuality or the sexual maturity, sexuality, and only because I find it fascinating. I meet so many different types of people, and I think we all have backgrounds of maybe traumatic experiences and childhood trauma that have led us to the place where we are now. And I told you yesterday my course of study with psychology before I became a trainer and a health coach, and so I'm just drawn to just want to know, what brought people to behave the way that they are. And being someone who's been single now for about 4.5 years, in dating, it's very interesting to find what you find in other people. You just kind of assume that people are going to be a certain way, and then their story comes out, and you're like, oh, what brought them to that? How that's why they are who they are. So that's a fascinating topic that I wouldn't mind learning more about.
Yeah, that's it truly is. All of them are fascinating from every aspect of it, because it's, for me, the physical body has how much to it, right? We've discussed some things, and for the sake of not burning the topic and not having too many sidebar conversations that the audience wouldn't be privileged to, the physical body is a fascinating thing, because I'm like, what is there a total level of maturity when it comes to the physical body? And well, no, because all we're doing is we're conditioning the body to meet the demand, whatever our goal is. So if we want to be a mountain climber, is an example that I like to use. Well, you can be the world-class best mountain climber, but you're probably not going to be able to even hit a ball, for baseball, but you might, but you're probably not going to be the best baseball player in the world. It does not translate perfectly to the total of conditioning. It's conditioned for mountain climbing. Same thing for bodybuilding and powerlifting. And you get into it, doesn't matter. Golf is the Ferrari of sports, by the way. Now, I love to tell people that, because they look at it and they're like, oh, okay, well, that's neat. I'm like, you have no idea what kind of conditioning it takes and fine-tuning.
And it's very technical. It's extremely technical. Yes.
Centimeters matter, in golf. Yeah. Baseball, whatever, maybe not.
Yes.
Golf, no, it's not a maybe or maybe not. No, it's a guarantee. It's a centimeter max, because it's fine-tuning the nerve. Anyway, not to go far into that. We both have backgrounds in fitness. And then when you get to the business is look, we live in an entrepreneur capital of the world. You can make anything. It's the American dream. Is what foreign people are sold about our country, is that we are the American dream. The American dream is get white picket fence, 2-story house, 2.3 kids, or whatever it is now, and you just have the job and the 2 cars in the driveway. You got the thing, right, that just says you made it, but you could also do it on your own. You don't need to work for somebody, it's just the dream. So it's fascinating to me, because where do people start, and what challenges do they come across? Most people want to talk about the successes. I want to talk about the challenges, because the challenges are what we're neglected in learning in this life. Because we don't have people to say, you're supposed to go through this, that have that depth of connection our parents, our previous generation parents had, where they're like, you're supposed to go through this, honey. Not this, oh, the world's unfair. Let me to shield you from the world, And I'm caught up in my own stuff. I can't deal with you right now. The whole abandonment of parenting that we've unfortunately gotten to.
Yeah.
And we learn valuable lessons from that, because that translates into business and translates into our adult life. So with this, those 8 areas, to me, will help us all create a more fulfilling experience in life. If any one of these areas are neglected, you're going to have that area as a deficit. When it's finally evoked to be the thing that has the greatest priority at that moment, you're going to likely use your strengths against yourself and say, well, I'm so good over there, I don't get it, let me hide from this. Or I'm going to bulldoze through it and do something that is unethical, right? Or that you're ashamed of, or whatever the problem might come out of it. You know, officer knocking on your door. You never know what the hell that thing might be. You know, or this person said they'd always be there in my life and they're not there anymore. It's like, well, what did you do in your part for that to happen? What are you talking about? I'm the victim.
Right.
Layers.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so with that, if you don't mind me asking, and I'd love to find out, because anytime, what did you do prior to fitness? Did you have any occupation prior to fitness?
I did. Well, before I went to college, I would say my most memorable job was in sales. And I never claimed to be a salesperson, never wanted to be a salesperson, but I worked for a national wedding entertainment company. And so I was probably, gosh, my son was really young, and I just needed a decent, 9 to 5. So I sat in a cubicle for a few years until 2008, when I basically got laid off as one of the last ones, only because my boss, one of my longtime mentors, actually, we still talk to this day. She's like, I just loved you so much, and you had a young child. I didn't want to, I didn't want to let you go, but it's 2008, and we're all losing our homes and our jobs, and and the same thing happened to me. And she said, you know what, Misty, at that point, I was 28 years old, and she said, you need to go to college. She's like, you are smart. The way that you think will be exactly what college, college isn't for everyone, but college is for you. And I had dropped out of college when I was 19. So, and that's a long story in itself. But I came back to college at 29. I took her advice. She's still happy to this day that, whenever we talk, she's like, you took my advice. And so and then when I went to college, I immediately gravitated towards psychology for so many reasons, because of there was just a lot of mental disease in my family, particularly with the men, and a lot of drug addiction and alcohol addiction. So I watched this from a very young age, and so I thought, I want to be a drug counselor. That's just that called me. The man that I was with, my son's father, had his own demons, and I was trying to help him and save him, and not anymore, obviously, but that is what I wanted. And then so for a little while outside of college, I did that. And then as I was doing that was when I was going to the gym. I just was he and I had broken up, and I was just trying to get myself and get my mental psyche back together. And so I was working for a drug rehab, but hating it. Hating the revolving door of, and I was basically a babysitter, of watching people come in and, watch them all day, because I just only had a bachelor's degree. So I was just basically their, babysitter. It wasn't like I could really do much for them, and it was very low pay, but I was going to the gym, and one of the guys behind the counter was like, you have excellent form. You do this so well. I would have thought that you did this for a living. and I hadn't really been even exercising that long. It just came very naturally to me. And he said, you should be doing this. So I've always followed, like, if enough people tell me, hey, you need to do this, you're good at this, then I'm like, okay, maybe I need to look into that. So I went and took a few-month course with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and that's how I came to become a trainer.
I love it.
Yeah.
And with that, so you had some challenges along the way, right? Like, you went into something that was you had a root value to do a cause-based career.
Mm-hmm.
You've got family issues and challenges that you'd really like, and you learn from, by the way. You learned a lot from that, and you saw applicability in a career direction with the value of making a difference. And then when you got into it, you've also realized that field is fairly saturated, right? It is incredible.
Well, also realized that the system is broken in this country, the system of drug rehab, and again, that's another topic that we could go on all day. But there are a lot of systems in this country that are broken. And I mean, fitness isn't any different because you've worked in it as well, and I've seen it along the years too. It's a broken system that we make people believe that they have to look a certain way, and that there's such a stigma on aesthetics. But it gave me a freedom that it was a much more positive position to go into, because rather when you're watching people overdose on drugs and have to go to drug rehab or get put into drug rehab, it's never a positive position. It's never a positive mindset or positive place to be at work. But I can't remember a lot of days of being a trainer and a coach where I haven't had good days, where I haven't had mostly positive days, where I've been able to help people. So if I thought about my life long term, how do I want to spend most of my day? Do I want to be, in the deep despairs with these people? And I'm sure there's people out there that are great for that, that they're fantastic at helping those people out of that. But I didn't want to be brought down into that, So, yeah.
And it's easy to happen, right? Like people can definitely be like quicksand and pull you into it.
Mm-hmm.
But so to give an example of from my own personal experience on a micro level, when it comes to the system is broken, a lot of them are. And I would say that there's really little incentive to fix them because they create repeat business.
Mm-hmm.
I started off my experience working in the fitness industry in a physical therapy office as a corrective exercise specialist, first a functional trainer and became a corrective exercise specialist. And I didn't work with the physical therapy clients. It's when they finished with their sessions their therapy, they could see me, and my job was to figure out what was the body conditions prior to the accident that they claimed the injury was from. What was the movement patterns and their overall physical abilities prior to, because there you get muscle tension issues, you get the memory systems in the body like neuromemory, and then you have muscle tension, like all of this, and then you have, okay, well, I was pulling the string of my lawnmower and I blew my back out, right? Yeah. And it's like, well, it wasn't that, actually. I mean, that's the catalyst. That was the moment that caused the injury you're aware of.
But what's the root cause? Yeah.
The root was you built your body in that way to get to the point of having that issue because of the way you maintained yourself.
Right. And that's what I love about functional training. That's what I do myself. I try to find, what are you doing? What are your patterns?
Yeah.
So.
And that tells you so much because we have the biomechanics of the body. We have movement patterns that we know are the most efficient for the human body to move in, and we have the deviations associated. Mm-hmm. But the micro moment of example here that shows that the system is broken, and the value of, if we don't address this, then I can get compounding factors from each individual, is I was working at a facility that had a CrossFit location immediately next to me. Like in my parking lot, when I would back up into my parking space, right in front of me was this big metal building, which is one of the draws to in the fitness industry. One of the draws to having a CrossFit location is that it was very minimal startup costs.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to fill the place with equipment, which is very expensive.
No air conditioning either. Like you don't have to
air conditioning. Your utilities are lower. There's just so much that actually is a positive for a business owner to say, hey, let's start it. So I pull up one morning and the big roll-up doors come open and all of these people come burling out like ants, right? Like running the stand line. And I'm like, wow, it was impressive to see how many clients they had running out. And then the next thing I see is not just the clients run out, but one particular client got my eye. And I saw this person running, and they had a sandbag on their left shoulder, arm up like this, and they're running with it. And I'm like, already, you're running with a cross-sectional activation that you are probably not conditioned well for, but you probably think I'm going to get some great abdominal conditioning, but nobody checked for muscle imbalances.
Right.
And the person had a knee brace on their left knee.
Oh boy, we both know what that means.
Oh, wait, I've got the icing on the cake for this. Then I find out the person that owns that CrossFit facility is a physical therapist. Like, that person knows. That person knows better. And I guarantee you, they hurt themselves from doing the workouts in there, they're going to go see that a physical therapist is a very high likelihood. Now, if he's not there to observe it, all of this, and I just saw this is absolute derelict of duty. This is, to me, if you're an ethical person, there's no way in hell you would do that.
Right.
So it shows you the system's broken as a micro value, but when you get to the bigger industry level, you'll see that the industries complement each other for the use of human beings going through the system.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it's no different than in the drug rehab system with the court system here, and the way that the way that people are sentenced to drug rehab when they didn't even do drugs. They were drug selling. They were selling the drugs. Why are they filling up our drug rehab? It's a terrible, and when you see it, when you're sitting there and you're watching it, it's terrible, especially if you're ethical, like it seems like we both are. You don't want to be a part of that.
No,
So,
it's a turn off for me, because
yeah.
it falls in the same category with lying and being deceiving.
Right.
It's making my life off of somebody else's loss. And
Right.
I refuse to do that. That's very similar to the same thing with lying too, by the way. You're
Right.
So here's something that I would like to address that you had mentioned earlier, and if I could give this to you and also anybody who would watch the videos. When you said for what you can, but you're not the most mature person, the beautiful thing about it is that you've put in the work on yourself, and there will always be people that will benefit from you. No matter how mature you are, you're still going to be able to bring great contribution to people no matter what, because there will always be people that will, one, see that you have value for whatever they assess that value in, and then they'll have the training and conditioning that you have gone through that you can prove that value is not vacuous or absent.
I do believe that now. Maybe when I was much younger in this work, I didn't have the faith in myself to believe that I could really help people. I was like, I felt I had that imposter syndrome. It took me a while to realize, and enough people telling me, wow, you're really good at this. Before I realized, oh, you know what? I'm helping people here. I'm doing the right thing. This is my life's calling. But I would say for anyone that's newer in this, or that, new to anything, starting out, don't expect to be mature. Don't expect, it's going to take years to get you to a point of feeling adequate of what you're doing, or above adequate.
The other beautiful thing about it is you're still going to do something. Just do something that's strategized to make your life what you want it to be, versus just paying your bills or getting by. You're still going to pay your bills and get by, but sometimes it's 1%, and the course direction of what you want to accomplish will change your life.
Absolutely.
You make that 1% on a daily basis. What happens after a year? You could be pretty much unrecognizable to yourself by how much progress you made just by that simple dedication on a daily basis. What does 1% cost you?
Right.
So,
right.
At some point in time, money might be involved, but you're using 1% to the investment. You're not using everything you got in your savings. It's a very modest approach to growth, but why not make that kind of investment in yourself?
Of course.
And you'll inspire others. It's a beautiful thing about it. So, for that spot, that place, by the way, here's another thing that is a transitional value, is that you will always have people that you appeal to the level that you are developed. When you get students, because along the way you'll have students or mentees that'll want, right? Because there's a difference between a client and a student. And I came up with a lot of distinctions when I was working in the fitness industry to the capacity of full-time. Because I started going in and fixing the companies. I go in and fix the gyms and make them profitable. Because a lot of them don't know how to be profitable. They're led by passion, not by good business structure.
Yes.
You don't want it to just be profit, because then the passion disappears and nobody wants to work for you. So you have to have a good balance, right? So I would go in and teach people how to develop their companies in a way that actually made it so that why would people be invested to work here? If you're talking about paychecks, paycheck employees will leave you.
Right.
Better money, less frustration, I'm gone. See ya. Career mindset, career mindset takes more, but you build it, they stay, and you can create a wonderful living for people.
Yes.
So, I lost my train of thought there. I apologize. I got up into that other part of my business, and I'm like, shit.
Okay.
Well, it was, I'm sorry. Yes, I got my track back, my train of thought here, and it's coming through like a choo-choo train. So when you get to a certain place, the distinctions, I remember where I left off here, was the student versus the client, right? And a client will pay you money, and you'll just do the work with them, right? They may not do the homework, whatever, and they also are very unlikely to want to hear about the science. They don't really want to know the technology. They'll talk about their car, their family. They'll talk about all of these different things. If you sit there and you spend that session talking about the science because you're passionate about it and your client's not, there's a disconnect that occurs.
Absolutely.
That client is now lowering their timeline. Their attrition potential is going up because they're likely to leave you. Your value is going down because you've mix-matched their interests. You can't just be an amazing trainer. You can be a world-class bodybuilding trainer or any level athlete trainer, and you'll end up turning them off if you sit there and talk to them about it all the time.
Well, yeah, they're coming to you because you know all that stuff, but they don't need to know all that stuff.
Exactly. But you will have clients that want to know the science.
Oh, and that's what I was going to say. There's a small 10% that's like, why are we doing it like this? What's this muscle called? Why is it? What's the mechanism here? You know?
That's why I came up with the distinction student versus client.
The
student will run as fast as they can to get across campus so they're not late for the next class.
The
client would be like, I paid for the class, whatever. I'll still get a B or a C or whatever. I don't care. The student's like, no, I don't want to let my instructor down or my professor. I don't want to let my trainer down. If my trainer wants me to drink more water, by God, I'm drinking more water.
Oh, yes.
If my trainer wants me to change these behaviors, I'm going to train it. So I changed that because I noticed that the friction levels and frustration that the trainers were going through and the attrition I was dealing with at the company level, the business level, there was something to address there. So I had to come up with distinctions, and that started off from the beginning when the cell was made about training. What type of client are you? Are you a client or a student? It's like, I don't know the difference. Well, these are the two different variables. Which are you? And then they self-assigned, and then I told the trainer. So when the trainer would get it, they would know training client or coaching client.
Yes.
And then how do you work with them? You still do training classes. You still give them their sessions, but what topics do you have with them?
Right.
It's creating the right kind of categories for people.
Absolutely.
So that's a care-centric direction, and that's something that's not common in the industry. And it's a subtle thing, but it makes a big difference.
Yes, definitely. I've seen that in my own business for sure.
Yeah. So getting to that point where you saying, hey, you know what, I'm not the complete mature person. There's a process that I've learned with teachers that we love learning. And we also learn, when I learn from myself and others. I don't just learn from me, which to me makes it feel like I have an accelerant to my learning process. Because whenever I am taking in new information, I'll hear what the person's wanting to share with me. And then from there, I'm learning what that is so that I could also share that with others, not just for me.
Yes.
So when you get to a certain stage where you're like, hey, my top student is right there with me. I don't know what to do with this person, and I feel like I'm starting to level off with them. Well, suggesting another mentor. But then you start the conversation with that mentor as well and be like, I want you to mentor me as a mentor.
Oh, interesting.
Don't just mentor me as a student. Mentor me as a mentor, because your learning capacity is for yourself and others, where the other person's likely for themselves. It's not a guarantee, and they could also be themselves and others, but you're still the one that's advancing above, and you also have all the other clients you're responsible to, and they may just be responsible people in their life like their family, friends, that kind of thing. So, enroll the mentor in a different type of mentoring. Mentor me as a mentor.
I like that.
Bring me to you. I'm your student plus I am a level of a mentor that I'm developing myself behind you. So anyway, clarity and distinctions, right?
Yes.
So back to you, since I went on a little tirade there. So with the physical, like we haven't talked much about the physical body and its maturity. We actually have spoke the majority of this, the business side of it.
Yes.
So
let's get into the physical then.
One more thing on the maturity, because it's really interesting to me that we did touch on in our private conversation. But with this one, I'd like to expand on it.
Okay.
You said that you worked for a company, and then they changed their business model, right? So you worked as a trainer for a company, and they changed their business model on you. Would you mind talking about that and share that with a little bit with us?
Yes. Well, the company that I was working with is Best Day Fitness here in St. Petersburg. It's a private studio, all functional training. When I went there, I understood what functional training was. I've been there about 5 years, but I didn't. The owner, Chris, kind of took me under his wing and was willing to teach me a little bit more. And of course, I'm an avid learner, and as long as you're willing to come in there and learn, then they'll let you shadow. And then eventually he wanted me there, and I had a book of clients that I did bring over there, but it did turn into just an hourly position. He was paying his clients a good amount hourly. It was good for the normal rate of what a trainer would make with my level of experience at that time. And, of course, he had his business to run, too. So, of course, he's charged us what, gyms do. They charge a lot more for the services, and then they pay their trainers a certain amount, but then they've got their overhead, So that lasted, unfortunately, we all went through COVID together. We had to pivot that business model a few times. Thankfully he is just a very open-minded, forward entrepreneur himself. And I love him to death. I think he's one of the best humans on the planet, honestly. He'd probably be somebody you might want to interview. He would love to talk to this guy. He just has some fantastic ideas. And so as soon as COVID happens and they told us, no more, you're not coming in this facility, you just figure it out. And so thankfully, I was also working as a virtual health coach for another company. So I was health coaching at that time. So it's not like it was my only job, but I was like, well, how can I make this happen? How can you train people? I had never thought that you could train people online. I'm like, how would that work? And of course you can't do that with everyone. I have clients that are in their late 70s that are working particularly just on balance. There's no way you're training someone on balance and stability when they're using a walker to come into the studio. There's no way you're training them online, So for some people it didn't happen, and then of course some people would make home visits, but anyway, I got into virtual training through this time, and then of course we all started coming back, but it still just wasn't profitable for a while. And so for him, the owner at Best Day, the best thing for him to do, and he ended up bringing someone on that was similar to what you do, is making fitness businesses profitable. She had done it out in Colorado, up in New York, and so she kind of travels around the country, finds businesses that need her, and she was fantastic. She knew what she was doing. And her idea in the beginning, of course, it wasn't the initial idea was not going to be, hey, let's make them all their own business owners and just make this a space rental model. But I think when she came in and she saw all of us and how passionate we were and how we each had our own niches, and we are not, and I'm not bragging by any means, but we are not just your typical group of just box gym trainers. We all have specialties. We all we study this. We are constantly doing continuing education. He affectionately calls us the besties because it's Best Day Fitness. He just it seemed like the logical thing to do, right? Is to moving forward. It was just an evolution process, and we all would have meetings every week. Well, how are we going to do things, and what are we going to? And they basically taught us how to become an entrepreneur, and how do you open up your own LLC? How do you do the bank account thing? How do you do your accounting? And so, for almost a year before, we had these meetings about how to, how are you going to do this? We're going to handhold you into your own business. So it was interesting because I was, they'll tell you, I was kind of angry. They were like, that's just, she wasn't herself. Like, I was mad because I was like, I liked it the way it was. So, but like I said, it's been the best thing that's ever happened. And anything in my life, I've noticed anything that's ever happened where it just shocked the hell out of me and made me have to pivot to something completely different. I never liked it. No, I don't think anyone likes change, but I've learned to embrace it and just take on the challenge of it. And then I've always come out of it saying, this is great. I'm glad I did that.
Right. It's the forging of a diamond.
Mhm.
Imagine the hellish screams a diamond would make in the process of being created. Right? Like it's like
Mhm.
the unrelenting forces necessary to create one. Pressure, time, heat, all the things that just make most people crack.
Mhm.
But when we admire success, we typically admire success bank account, the house, the car, the way that they behave, the things that are afforded because of the sacrifices and challenges they've gone through. And
Mhm.
for me, look for the blueprint. Like the blueprint, you're going to create your own thing because it's your flavor. Even
Right.
if you take their blueprint, you're going to get your own thing. Do you want exactly that person's life, or do you want a version of that person's life?
Yeah. I
And
get what
so
you're saying.
learning how to pivot to change direction based off of the current circumstances, or how to stay continuous, like stay the path.
Mhm.
It's like that's an art in itself. So
Right.
change is something that just is going to happen. Your adaptability, right? And there's the comfortability of what's known, because if you think about everything that you know up until that point, the pattern of thinking necessary to hold that in place is practiced.
Yes.
It is not just the external. It's
Yeah.
actually the majority of your issues are not the external, they're internal, because you're having the fight to change the way you think. And what you're attached to has to do with the way that you know how to accumulate the outcome. And when that doesn't show up, then the
Right.
uncertainty comes in, and then the fear of loss and scarcity gets you,
Mhm.
and then you're like, somebody else did this to me.
Yeah.
You bastards. Why
It's your
can't you let
fault.
me have this
Yeah.
good thing, right? And look, that's a natural human behavior. The
Yes.
thing is how long does it exist in your space before you let go of it? And you've already illustrated that as well. You went through it, and then you're like, well, then the outcome was still better, right?
But I think part of maturity is, I mean, since we're talking about maturity, is that we um, go through things in the past to get us to this point. If you go through change in the past, and you're going to start getting used to the fact that things change, that's the only thing that doesn't change is that things change, you know? I mean, you're constantly going to be hit with new things, and you can handle it in a certain way, or you can get all upset and play the victim and be upset with and blame everybody else, or you can say, hey, I've done this before. I've done harder things than this, and now you're. And before I knew it, I was in a place of making 3 times more money than I was making back then. I was able to put my son through college without having to take out any loans. I've paid off a lot of debt. I mean, I just in 2 years, it's just been amazing. And my clients love me. I have an 80% retention rate. Not a lot of not a lot of trainers can say that. And since you're in fitness, I know what you mean. But I mean, I have clients that have literally told me, "I'll be with you till the day I die." And most of the time, trainers lose clients. They get them for a certain amount of time, and I certainly have my clients that happens with as well. But I just feel very fortunate to have taken this leap, and it's it's been it's such a rewarding experience.
You know, what I love about that is, I mean, that's the reality of it, right? Like there's success models, and then you find the success models and you study them. At 80% retention, measured annually, by the way, for the listeners,
Mhm.
that's the method to measure annual is gives you your best measurement. First, attrition rate, it depends on contracts, right? Do you run contracts?
Yes.
Okay. What's your terms on your contracts? 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, one
Uh,
year?
the typical is 3 months, but I have 1 month, I have 3 months, I have 6 months, and then and if someone wants to do a year, I would. But
Okay.
most of the time, it's 3 months.
Okay, that's fairly standard overall in the industry is a 3 month window.
Mhm.
So you measure attrition. First level attrition is going to be measured off the length of contract. Second level is going to be annual. So, and you're doing fantastic. 80% attrition, or I'm sorry, retention is a
Mhm.
20% retention or attrition.
Mhm.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah. I was
So
pretty
kudos to
amazed
you.
to see it myself because never before had I seen that in the past with myself. So I thought, well, I must be doing something right
You
here.
are absolutely, and it's That's the things that I love is you find the success model. So I do want to like throw something out there. This is from previous conversations and what I do talk about. And it'll be a little bit of a diatribe on my part, but I'll just throw it out there real quick and we can move into the next part, which will be the physical portion of maturity and conditioning, because I think there's something that you'll create a great degree of value in outside of just what we already have seen, if you don't mind talking about something we did mention already about.
Okay.
And that absolutely fits into the physical portion of the physical maturity. So what I'd like to talk about just briefly is when I talk about Pandora's box. Are you familiar with Greek mythology and Pandora's box? It was a
Remind me. I haven't heard of Pandora's box.
Basically, it was a gift curse. It was presented as a gift, but it truly was a curse because a god was jealous that a human was sleeping with Zeus. And it was Pandora.
Okay.
So Pandora's box. She's given the box to her. And inside of the box is this beautiful thing. It just really was just like, it was curiosity invoked someone to open it because it was so beautiful. It just seemed so precious. When you'd open it, chaos would release.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the contrast, right? Beauty.
Gotcha.
And chaos, right? So you had chaos that would come out. Well, in our living experience, the way that I teach Pandora's box is to make it more real to you. And Pandora's box is anytime a challenge comes along you refuse to learn, it becomes chaos.
Yes.
And what we do to isolate it from our life is we put it into Pandora's box and say, you know what, screw it. I don't care. It'll eventually go away. I can avoid this thing long enough, and then it'll die down. And you put it in the box. But it doesn't go away. It's just isolated. It's just quarantined.
Wow, I love that analogy.
And then more comes along, and then you're like, hey, put it away. And you learn how to put stuff into the box. But guess what? Every time you decide not to tell the truth, every time you decide not to face a reality and to learn from it and grow through it, you're putting it in the box. So once the box comes open, typically it's not one lesson that comes out in the form of chaos, because it's a lesson, then it becomes chaos if you don't learn it.
Mm-hmm.
In the truth sense, it's just the seed as a lesson. You either learn it, now you have the attribute that comes from learning it, or it becomes chaos and you try to quarantine it.
And then you just keep getting thrown that lesson over and over again.
Exactly. But it gets bigger because your life doesn't stay where it was when that came the first time, right?
Right.
When you were 8 years old, well, you're 30, and it did not grow. It grew. It just grew in the absence of your growth with it.
Right.
As soon as you open up that box, and that box could be my relationship, never again. I'm never going to have a relationship like that again. Put that away in the box. Somebody else comes along, and they start tugging at your heartstrings, your intimacy connections, all the rest of this stuff, and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to open my heart up again. And you open it up, and then Pandora's box says, I got a little something for you. And you can't function because you're like, I remember this. You're just like X.
Yep.
You're just like whomever in my past. And you have like all of the weight that's your business. That's your chaos.
Mm-hmm.
You shackle this new person to it going, I know you're going to screw me over like the other person.
Yep.
I know that I'm going to get hurt again. So it's this perpetuated system, but it keeps getting bigger. So
Yes.
the way I teach it is when Pandora's box, you recognize what it is, then you just crack it open, you let a lesson come out. You let a little piece of chaos come out, and you have to decipher how it's a lesson and then gain the attribute. And
Mm-hmm.
more gain the attribute. Before you know it, you got the little lessons. They're minuscule by comparison. But then when that colossus comes along, the big thing, you're not prepared for, infidelity in a marriage, health crisis, something like that. That's a big issue. Because you've taken on all of those other challenges, you know how to face the thing that you don't want to face.
Right.
And you have the ways to know that you have the confidence to get through it.
Right.
Versus, I don't know what to do. I need to run away from this thing. So anyway.
I love it.
That's just a sample of the Pandora.
It's a fantastic analogy. I like that. I'm going to use that.
Thank you. So to the physical aspect of it, do you mind speaking about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Where should I start?
Well, so for anybody out there, Misti's not just this woman that's over here that's just having a great conversation with me. Not just a woman that left working in the addiction space in mental health. She is somebody else. right? She's got more to her. Everybody, by the way, everybody's going to watch this. There's something special about you. You just may not know how to share it with the world, or you only share it with a few people. So Misty shared this with me, and I'm glad that she's willing to speak about it because there's some challenges that she faces that a lot of us take for granted. And working in the physical world and working in physical maturity as a personal trainer, this is something worth mentioning.
Yeah,
So
I would love to talk about that. Yeah. I was born with a very rare retinal disease called achromatopsia. It's a genetic mutation that both of my parents carried as a recessive gene, but no one else in my family has it. It's extremely rare. About 1 in a million people get it, and it's not treatable. So it has taken away all of my light and color vision, so I don't drive. I can't drive. Well, I can't drive at all, even though I probably could at night, but they won't give me a driver's license during the daytime because I get flooded when there's a lot of light. My vision gets flooded and everything's very distorted. And so I typically wear a lot of hats and sunglasses when there's bright light. At the studio, I adapt my and anywhere I go, anywhere that I stay for long time. There's adaptive lighting, there's adaptive computer technology. I've learned to adapt, but it was a challenge growing up, and I do believe that's made me who I am. It's a very, very large part of who I am, even though I don't like to talk about it because it's. I don't mind talking about it right now because, to be honest with you, and I didn't say this to you yesterday when we spoke, but I have been waiting and I'm 44 years old, so I've been waiting to come out and talk about this and find some way to talk about it. And all of my clients know, because it becomes obvious when you're around me enough. There are some little things that and I'm also legally blind because of the distortion in vision. My vision is 2400 in both eyes, so I have to look very closely at things. I have to have large print. So when you're around me enough, you see those things, and so I spent a lot of my life running from that, and well, not really. Well, yes, running, but I've embraced it now, but when I was much younger, there was a lot of coddling by my family, and they meant well, but there was a lot of, she won't be able to do this, she won't be able to drive, she's not going to have like a regular job, or that was the way that it was made me to feel. Maybe looking back, like if my mom would probably say, no, I was very encouraging to you. But in that, I was made to feel like I was being, babied, So there was a lot of feeling like inadequate and not enough. So I think, and then growing up not being able to be very physical, because when you have distortion in vision and visual impairment, I couldn't play any sports. So anything with a hand-eye, can't throw a ball and hit. It's funny. So I always got taken out of gym class, PE class, which I wanted to do that, but there wasn't a way for me to do it. So they tried to put me in places in class, like as a teacher's assistant, and always tried to make me feel valuable. But never got to play with the rest of the kids in the fun part of school, in gym class, so, and never got to be part of sports. And so it was exciting when my son grew up and started playing basketball and he was a star, so my mom finally got to see someone, we get to go to games and stuff like that. But anyway, getting too far off topic, that was where, that was where I think my love for when I did learn to finally move my body and move it in a purposeful, meaningful way, and realize that I had some control and agency over movement and how I could change my own body. And it wasn't even for the sake of aesthetics, even though I think there's always some aesthetics involved there, but it was more so that, oh my gosh, I can lose weight, I can gain muscle, I can change just how I feel every day, just walking around. My posture's different, my shoulders are back, and people treat me differently, because this, you as someone that's fit and healthy, you do get treated differently. And it's unfortunate that it's that way. And because inside, I am still that little girl that was bullied, that was teased, that had a visual impairment, that, that went through things that are just unimaginable. But I still look at there's still that kind of part of me that looks at myself like, oh, why do I deserve this? I'm still that that geeky little girl with a disability, and I don't like to call it a disability. I do call it an impairment, but for a long time I called it a disability. But now it's just something that, I modify. And a lot of people that meet me are like, really? They'll find out later, and they won't know, because I've done a lot to try to adapt myself to where that doesn't come up. But I do find myself more now wanting to talk more about it, especially because there's so many people out there struggling with physical, mental, multiple different types of learning disabilities, and it blows me away what people will do to try to hide these things, when it really is what makes them so unique. And that's really why I wanted to start talking about it. I'm glad that you brought it up, and I've wanted to start on my page and in my training, and I talk with clients about it, and how to overcome that and make it your strength, because I do think it's really what's made me who I am.
Yeah, and I can see two parts to that, right? One of them is like, if you identify with the condition, then it becomes part of your character in such a way that it could be a scapegoat, it could be ways to get off of challenges, things like that. You did not choose that path. The other is by going out and talking about it. What comes to mind for me is something that I detest about the media, where they would come in and like a news channel or something would come in and they'd highlight you and be like, hey, this person has this challenge and look at what she can do. Well,
yeah, I know. I hate that so much.
One side is like, I can get away with something as a, in the youthful mindset, the immature mindset. But as you've developed to a degree, then you're like, hey, I can make this into a business model. That's actually letting in the demon you've been fighting this entire time, but from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I feel that you're mature enough not to do that, because if you do start talking openly about this, with the way that we're now going, as far as the country goes, there is a pretty good chance we're going to start looking for feel-good reports again. We're going to start looking for overcoming challenges in a way that inspires people. And I feel that you wouldn't be a person that becomes susceptible to it and make it an honorable thing to where it becomes too much of your identity as well. Where
right.
Hey, man, this is just what I have as far as the deck that I've been dealt, the hand of cards I've been dealt. And I'm going to make my life work this way and let that inspire other people to make their lives work that way too.
Well, I think I'm already kind of doing it in my coaching practice, because you'll see in some of my videos how I will find things about my clients that may be setbacks for them, that's something that's keeping them from getting to where they should get in the way for most people, and I will bring that out and say, look at what they're doing anyway. They're not letting this get in their way. And so I think in a kind of an indirect way, it's coming out in my training and in my coaching. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it's something that you can't separate from yourself, but the method that you work with it's empowering, but it's not empowering to become identity, and it's not empowering in a way of like, or the other side's not empowering. The other side is enabling. Right, it's neither side of it really. It's not the negatives. It's just the inspiration to make changes in your own life, no matter what.
Right.
And that is, it's admirable. It's inspiring to me. Not to use that word too many times, but that's
Thank you.
to me, because it is, everybody has the hand they've been dealt. Some of us just don't know where the card that we would say is the losing portion of our hand. It's not a losing portion. You just have to learn how to play it.
Yes.
Right? Like, having the 2 of diamonds is not the losing card.
Right. I mean,
the suit to follow. Right?
It's a perfect example. I have an 18-year-old client that decided to come and start paying for personal training and nutrition coaching on his own. I mean, and he's got a crap job. He doesn't make a lot of money, and his parents are both highly overweight, and they have diabetes, and he doesn't want to get diabetes, but he was well on that path, and he recognized it at 18 years old. And I just commend him. I see such drive there. That's amazing. And I mean, I think he would do it even without me. You know, one thing I've realized is that most of the time they've got it within them. You know, the people have it within them to change, especially once they realize that what the path that they're on is not suiting them, and they realize he has the presence of mind to realize that if he continues doing what his parents have been doing, he's going to continue to gain weight and he's going to continue to be unhealthy. So I just, you know, when I see things like that, it just makes me just love what I do even more.
Yeah. And to me, I see somebody that expands the experience of just personal training. He might be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's a different conversation to have with them.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
just something to explore, not to push you into it. But so
Yeah.
with that, it's the challenges that people seem to run into is they don't realize, like they think that, you know what, the only way to be successful in anything is that you just are lined up with the ideal circumstances versus somebody that just makes the circumstances work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for you, it's like, how many people do you know that's in the fitness industry that have the same types of challenges, right? And you're like, I don't care.
Right.
I don't give a damn. So what?
Yeah.
You know, transportation. Okay, well, you need to live in a way that actually allows you the access to get where you need to be on time.
Right.
So that's a whole other thing. Most people are just used to going out to their car
Right.
and leave.
You know, one of the things I can say I'm completely grateful for, though, is I walk 15 to 20,000 steps a day. I mean, but it becomes very easy for me to tell people, hey, you can walk more. You know, you just don't have to get in that car to go to the places you want to go. And we live in a beautiful state that you're not walking through snow all the time. But I mean, I feel fortunate that that's what I've been able to have. That I feel fortunate that I don't get it. I can hop in an Uber if I need to, or I can hop on a city bus if I have to, and that's what I'll do if I need to. But I walk the 2 miles to work every day, and I walk home, and I just rejoice in the fact that that keeps me fit and healthy, you know. So I think it's just taking those things that a lot of people would be like, oh, how do you never driven a car before, you know, and turning it into a, wow, this is great. I get my steps in.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the benefit of it, right? The benefit
Yes.
typically gets omitted because the emotionally they feel like they should have something different. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I got this, you know. So you could say it has the benefit of optimism, right? But I don't really necessarily hear optimism in as much as just you've just adjusted,
Right.
because you're not forcing yourself to view it that way. You're just like, whatever. That's just the.
No, no.
So, well, so with what we've gone over two different strengths, but the way that we did physical was not quite probably what you expected.
No, but that's okay. I'm glad that we did it that way. I've enjoyed being able to come out with it in that way.
But it's also like physical maturity is not just conditioning the body,
No,
physical
no.
opportunities to exercise or your health. It's also how do you live with the body you have?
Well, and it's the mind-body connection as well that is there. That there's so many people that come into me, they don't know how to control their body from their brain. Their brain is controlling all their muscles, and I mean, I could go into that all day long, but I mean, it's not just your body's not anything separate than what's inside here, and then the mindset has a lot to do with how the body feels and what it does and how it presents itself. So
That has to do with cognitive and emotional, right? So
yeah,
thinking process, the emotions that follow, and how that affects the physical. And
right.
and that's the beautiful thing about, like, when I get an opportunity to speak to somebody who's educated holistically or through an integrated viewpoint or perspective, that to me is like, this person's going to get it, and they're going to get it fast because
Yeah.
you're already conditioned to get it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
what is the 8 areas of maturity and how do they overlap? And they're not exclusive. Not a single area of maturity is exclusive to itself.
No, no.
How you teach it, you give it the category, and then you integrate.
Of
But
course.
that's actually how we do it in the holistic educations anyway, or at least the majority of them, is they teach categorical, then they integrate.
Absolutely, and that's one thing I love about. I think that's why I got into being a holistic health coach, is because I just realized that fitness wasn't enough, and there were so many other things that people were struggling with outside of just. You know, a lot of people, women would come to me and say, "Oh, my husband just divorced me, or cheated on me with another woman, and now I need to lose 20 pounds." And I'm like, "That's not why you need to lose 20 pounds. And you got so much other stuff going on over here that we got to deal with that." what's going on in your head? How are you sleeping? What are you eating? Like, what, are you seeing a therapist? Are you getting this taken care of? Because you losing 20 pounds isn't going to do anything for you. So when I decided to go for health coaching and really get into that realm, it was, I got to help people. I can't just help them by giving them a 45-minute or an hour workout. Like, that's not gonna do anything for them. They got a lot more areas to fix. So that's kind of what I see in your maturity project is we break it up into the areas, but they all coincide with each other. They're all there.
I'm smiling because you're getting what I'm up to.
Yeah.
And it's individual. It's like people like you that are replicators of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you start talking to people like that, which my marketing guy, which now I've got another one that's likely going to be working with me here soon, as a mentor, not for me, but no mentor in my company is exclusive to not work with me.
Mm-hmm.
We all work with each other to help build each other up because it's a community effort to grow, community maturity, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
by the way, you didn't mention community, but yet you work directly in community.
Right.
About the maturity aspects of community or the 8 areas, you bring that up because it probably just didn't stand out.
Right.
So, the whole point of it is like, hey, why can't we learn from each other? Here's the thing that even families don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Only well-structured families teach generationally. The majority of them say school's going to teach it, and then you're just going to have the "my parents were this way" conversation.
Yeah.
Versus my parents got
With
me to
your
understand
therapist someday.
What was that? Say that again.
I said, with your therapist someday, you'll be having that conversation.
Think about it. That's actually, by the way, because I did pursue psychology in college as well, and I left it because I was incredibly disappointed by where it was going.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
At this point, I would probably say, hey, if I got a doctorate in it, I would be in the Jordan Peterson category with it.
Oh.
You're coming after my education. You're going to take my license.
Yeah.
I have the knowledge. I don't care if you take the license or not.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that piece of paper means nothing.
Yeah, right. Especially when those people are in control of it. Which anyway, I'm not going down that path right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as that goes, when we integrate all of this information, we become better as an overall whole. So a bond together. As they say, your family isn't always the people that share your blood, but the people you choose to be that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have is we have a lot of people practicing young entrepreneurship mindsets, not necessarily full on. Like almost everybody tells you they got a side hustle, and I'm like, well, tell me the strategy that you're running that by. Okay, it gives me a little bit of an idea about how they think. But the problem is that what I mean by the young entrepreneur is that I'll do it all by myself.
Yeah.
I don't need anybody else. And then you have
it takes so many people to be an entrepreneur.
we're breaking down the fabric of the structural hierarchy that our entire country is built on.
Yes.
Because we have everybody being conditioned into narcissistic thinking that makes everyone believe they're owed something and everybody else has slighted them. Or anybody that doesn't give them the thing they feel that they're owed is they're slighted.
Well, there's also the thing that it's cool to be an entrepreneur now, and not everyone's an entrepreneur. I thought it because I didn't think it was cool, but and now I mean, even when I say I'm an entrepreneur, I'm inside my head, I'm going, what?
Yeah. Well, there's another distinction too. So the entrepreneur would be kind of like the disembodied CEO, if you will. They're just going to create their thing. Then there's an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Entrepreneurs need to know how to identify entrepreneurs and get them to work with them.
Okay.
An entrepreneur is the one that understands how to build the systems under them that's unique to the idea.
Okay, so that's
like the coach
that he had brought in to help us all become. That's what he needed. She was an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So yes, right? Internal systems, right? So it's like you can build these things out and you do it in a creative way. I have a lot of entrepreneur traits myself. So and you figure out uniquely and individually how to build those things. So it's like the CEO needs to have the other executives in order to execute on what they need done when they're at a larger company. And the beginning for an entrepreneur, you wear every hat because you can't afford anymore.
Right.
You can start affording, you start handing off. A lot of them don't know when to make the sacrifice to afford someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that all comes through maturity, and that's something that I do intend to help create an understanding in when it comes to the business maturity aspects. For time's sake, is there anything else you'd like to say on that? Because there's a subject I want to get a hold of before we finish up. We got about
No, I think we've covered a lot of good stuff as far as the physical realm, and now we've even gone into the business realm just a little bit.
So of all of them, there's two more questions, really. One of them is, of the 8 areas, what would you consider your greatest weakness?
Oh, spirituality.
Okay, purpose, spirituality?
Purpose, maybe not so much. I feel that I have a purpose. There are some separateness to that. I mean, the purpose, I know that my purpose in life, as far as, being a mother and what I need to do for my son, and my purpose and my calling is helping and teaching and coaching people in some way. I feel really lucky to be doing exactly when people say do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I'm that. I feel so grateful for that. But as far as spirituality, I struggle with that because it's I want to be more. I want to have more spiritual practices, and in a sense I do, but it is more on the like when I do breath work and I cold plunge and do it in sauna and deep breathing, and those are all. That's when I feel the most spiritual and when I'm being quiet with myself. And when I think of spirituality, I think of a regular practice of, solitude with yourself and what you would have if there was really no one else needs to be involved in that. That's your own sense of just calm and feeling at ease with the universe or whatever it is that for me, it's the universe. I have had experience in church, and I think of spirituality, and I respect everybody else's spirituality. I don't necessarily agree with church, but I'm not denying that there is a creator. And I just, I do feel like I'd like to work on more with just feeling at one with a higher being, and really, really having a practice where I could transcend. I've read of Joe Dispenza's books, and Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, I thought was an amazing book. And I did the meditations, and I couldn't seem to make meditation ever stick, even though when I was a virtual health coach, one of the habits because we had the company that I worked for had an app, and you would pick a habit and you would get a coach on that habit, and I would coach people in meditation. I didn't know jack about meditation. I learned what I needed to learn, and it sounded good. But I was basically coaching them to listen to a program and do it. So I was their coach for accountability. I wasn't teaching them meditation. But I through that, I started meditating, and I thought, I would kind of get like something from it, and then I'm like, I'm not really getting this. I mean, what? And I'm all about time. Just how worth it is this to me for my time that I'm spending on this, And honestly, when I found cold plunging and breath work and sauna, because I can spend 10 minutes on breath work, 15 in the sauna, 5 minutes in the cold tub, and I just feel like a new person. So I think spirituality is different for everybody, and where we find it and where we feel that oneness with ourselves and the universe, and we just feel that great feeling of joy and happiness, and no one can bring us down. That's spirituality to me, and I'd like to embrace that and embody that more and get out of the fight or flight. I wouldn't say that I have too much fight or flight anymore, because I've learned how to kind of control that. But to get out of the rush of every day of client after client and business and meetings and all this stuff, and be able to pull away and be spiritual every day and have some type of spiritual practice every day. I realize the need for it. I just don't know that I'm putting in the effort that I need to into it. Does that does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because it's all up to the distinctions, right? It's by the definition by which we understand it. And for me, the reason why spirituality and purpose are interchangeable is
Mm-hmm.
that when you make your purpose a spiritual practice, it'll never be stopped. It'll never be satiated. It's not satiation. It's it just cannot be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
It's your existence, right? It's what you live for. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
for me, spirituality does not require religion, but you can find spirituality through religion. Uh,
Right.
and so it doesn't require that. And I'm not knocking anybody that's religious, and I'm not knocking anybody who's not religious.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's more of what do you feel your purpose on this earth is? Because when you look at it from that perspective, now you have no other choice but to consider that to be some sort of spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have something. Like if you were to say your purpose on this earth is right, like you say, well, my purpose on this earth is to be this, you will do that thing no matter
Yeah.
what. But who mandates that? My purpose, well, purpose require like my purpose means that somebody else had to delegate that, right? Because purpose is something that's given, or there's something you belong in, something you fit in.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not require, for me, it doesn't really require a God figure necessarily, but I find that my area of maturity whenever it comes to religion took a big hit. And I wouldn't say necessarily a big hit. It broadened significantly is the better way of putting it when I went through my atheist phase.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for the people watching, I'm no longer in that. I denounced the concepts of atheism, but it broadened perspectives that I have. And it made it where I'm like, okay, well, everything that I used to scrutinize the religions I was familiar with when I was going through that transition, which I also researched a lot and I read a lot because I don't like to be uninformed whenever I want to talk about something important.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of that. Now, after a while, I came back and go, I'm arrogant, I'm ignorant, and quite frankly, I don't know shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I have so much more to learn, and I put up walls of arrogance that denied me access to other things. Whether it
Mm-hmm.
be true or not doesn't mean that my mind should not occupy time there to better understand it.
Of
So
course.
I shifted away.
Mm-hmm.
I actually made the distinction of the Maturity Project before it was titled that. Spirituality and purpose, it was not spirituality and purpose initially. When I was in my atheist phase, I titled it spirituality.
Ah, interesting.
It wasn't spirituality after I left my atheist phase. No, that was there during. And the reason why I was there during is because of how many people on this planet practice a religion. And I did have the honesty enough to say they have to know something I don't know, and they have to have maturity that I don't have.
I feel the same way, and that's why I'm so open to anyone of any different type of religion. I want to learn. I want to learn what is it that you know and what is it that you love about this. I learned a lot about Buddhism when I was in college. I wrote a paper on it, so I had to research it. I thought it was amazing. I almost became a Buddhist. Again, I got this close. I was doing like the chanting Buddhist. I was actually doing those chants, and I mean, I've tried so many different things just to see where do I fit in, and even with the meditation, where do I fit into spirituality? Because even atheism has spirituality. Like, I mean, everything has.
Oh, you better be careful. You're going to set people on fire.
Oh,
You're going to be burning
oh
up their seats.
no, my dad was an atheist, and he's passed, now, rest in peace, Dad. But um, he was still a spiritual guy. Like he may not admit that, but I saw it. It's just something that you see in someone, that I think, like you said earlier, I think spirituality is difficult to define because it's so broad and there's so much that it entangles there that it just it's just it overwhelms me to just even think about it, because I think we try to put it in a box and make it what we want it to be, and this is where there's so much divisiveness out there now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you see on social media people fighting over things they shouldn't be fighting about. Um, it's really sad that spirituality, that we can't just respect other people's spirituality and realize that spirituality is very different for everyone.
Absolutely. And I see that a lot of the things that we're dealing with is just a lack of maturity, because it is, like they say, ignorance is bliss. Well, somewhere along the line, somebody who's more mature has decided to take advantage of somebody who's less mature.
Mm-hmm.
They create the environment to make them feel blissful
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to intentional manipulation. So for me, the antidote to that is, let's just go after where people are lacking maturity and grant them their own growth into their own autonomy. Then
Yes.
you won't have people pulling the strings. Then you dissolve the religious structures that became a business model. Then you dissolve the political models that became a business model. Then you dissolve all of the business models that are that come in where altruism was supposed to be and got taken advantage of. Like, okay, well, I can sit there and beat my head against the wall and tell people till I'm blue in the face, you're being taken advantage of here, here, and here. Or let's go after the thing that actually is the immature aspect that has you think that that's actually the answer.
Right.
It's me, but also I reflect back on me all the time. What do I not know? Am I the problem? What is it about this? And then self-assess to see, because I want to be that honest, and I am functioning at that level of honesty with myself. So I've got to be careful on the time now, because
Okay.
this is how fast stuff goes, and I love it. But there's one more thing before we close up that I want to talk about. I apologize for anybody if you're watching and you're like, hey, you know what, or listening, because this will be on Spotify, TikTok, YouTube, and I'll put some stuff out on the other social medias as well. If I have an incomplete thought there or anything is like, Chad, give me that conclusion and I missed it, you can check in other videos, put comments in the comment section so we could all like read it and go, yeah, failing forward, by the way, that's this guy here. And I will always fail forward. I'll be humble enough not to be righteous and fight it. So, all right. Doesn't mean I don't have to deal with me, because some of that stuff stings when people point it out or they have to add their own little critique on it.
Yeah.
So, and I mean the undesirable critiques where they're like, yeah, that person's cringy or whatever they may say about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be a crab in a bucket. That's what I'm saying. Don't be a crab in a bucket. You want to be an ant, because ants help each other out. Crabs pull each other back down.
I agree.
Get out of the bucket when you're crabs. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. So the last part of it, and then we'll close up. What area really draws your attention that's fascinating? You mentioned earlier, is that still the area? And then I want to add a little bit of a cliffhanger on this one.
Yes. Sexuality is the area that really draws my attention. I just think it's such a broad, again, they're all very broad, but sexuality is ever changing. I think that Alfred Kinsey was way ahead of his time when he created the Kinsey scale. I think I got his name right, the Kinsey scale of sexuality. And I think that that's even just a very small part of sexuality. I think a lot of people think of sexuality as, how do you identify? But there is so much more to sexuality, and we could talk all day long about that. But I think he has it right, because it's on this continuum and people can feel different throughout their lives, and we go through different hormonal shifts, and we may question certain things that we do, and we may think we're going to behave in a certain way, and then we behave a certain way, and we behave a completely different way, and then we end up liking that. And so there's just so much that I've seen, and it's I could talk about it all day. Yeah.
One of the things that I think is really fascinating about it, are you familiar with Moshe Feldenkrais?
No.
Okay, Moshe Feldenkrais, he's an author. Well, he's passed now, but he was around in the time of Freud.
Okay.
He studied Freud.
Okay.
Diverged from him because he added judo into his practices of what he looked at, but he was an integrated thinker as well. So he had judo and he had psychology and all of this. He's a fascinating person.
Okay.
Potent Self. There's a lot of great books that he's written.
I'm right.
Feldenkrais.
Okay, Feldenkrais.
Last name is Feldenkrais. So he does talk about one thing that really stuck with me, and this is well over a decade ago I read this book. And he's talking about the reason why, like, so in relationships, when we date people, The beginning, the person is almost all fantasy. You have the physical attributes that you're attracted to. And as you get closer to them and you connect, you start to lose some of the mystery. Some of that is just like, hey, my name is, no longer do I fantasize about your name. I now have it, right? And the touch of a hand. Well,
Yeah.
no longer do I think what it's like to touch you is a mystery at the sense of the handshake. Then
Right.
you move into a hug. Well, now I know what you feel like in the hug and how you embrace. And
Yeah.
the mystery is dissolved, and now I have a profile being built for you. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when you can hug, you typically smell the person.
Mm-hmm.
You bring them in through your sensory system. You feel the touch, the smell. You know, you may get to the point where you taste the person, like when you kiss them or whatever, and you build a profile to the person. The mystery starts to dissolve, but the profile, it replaces it. The known parts of the person become real. Well, the fantasy continues to die. Modern dating is almost exclusively built inside of the fantasy realm.
It is.
I should be treated X, Y, and Z
Right.
versus the work it takes to make a relationship actually function.
Right.
So it gets to the point where you actually get to no more mystery. Now does the person line up with your core values? If they're too much like you, they bore you. If they're too far away from you, then it's too much chaos, or it's
Right.
just not a good fit. Right? Actually, what I would say, if they're too far away from you, then it's just you don't have a fit. But it is too much chaos. But the way you normally qualify that is just, I'm not interested, and I'll walk
Right.
away. But when
Yeah.
you get to that point where you get right there at that Goldilocks zone, that's where times can seem really chaotic. But that chaos is where you're really taking something highly important and
Mm-hmm.
you're putting it against somebody else's highly important. And passion and chaos are typically the same coin, different sides.
Yep.
Love it when I'm wearing passion, but chaos, man, I can't stand it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
One without the other, right? And it's actually part of the maturing process where you can actually make it so that the passion is the majority of what stays because you know what's causing the chaos. And then
Right.
profile value you can work with. Most of us in relationships never get there.
Mm-hmm.
We get to, I just had my second fight. It's been 3 months. I'm done.
Yeah.
I've got 15 people in the DMs. I'm
Yeah.
good. I got
It's
people on social media liking and hating my stuff.
yeah. It's
You
too
know,
easy to find someone new. I mean, at the click of it, at the swipe of it. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not a dating app person just because of that. I don't like the design. I
mm-hmm.
tried it and then I thought, this is stupid. They have taken away the real what really used to happen when we dated. And fortunately, you and I are old enough that we remember when people had to meet each other in
Nope.
person.
You like me? Check yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, to actually talk to someone, yeah.
But so why I brought all of that up is when you get to sexuality, there is a veil of a taboo. Don't cross into, right? And I do agree. What it is it's not a taboo. There's something sacred. And what we do is we have a world where we don't have a sacred value in it anymore. So what that's done is it's created fickle relationships
Mm-hmm.
where either there's some sort of a reenactment of a porno,
Yeah.
or it is a Jerry Springer moment, and then you're off to the next opportunity to be a wrecking ball.
Right.
So we have now so much confusion going on. It's like you don't even have to be you. You're tired of being you today, be somebody else. And expect everybody else to accept the person you're telling them that you are right now. We
Yeah.
already have a problem just in standard behavior where it's still measurably the same. You're just like, I'm changing parts of who I am because I want to better myself. Now you have this massive U-turn where it's like, yeah, I'm a boy today. It's like,
Yeah.
you were a girl yesterday. It's like,
Yeah.
you accept me or there's going to be some sort of violent reaction. You've harmed me. You've created these harms. And I'm like, we're
Mhm.
creating more and more division, and that stuff has got to stop.
Well, yeah.
So,
It was a real fascination for me about the sex, all the sex changes and the more transgender people than ever, which I completely respect if that's what someone wants to do. But it is fascinating that that's where we are right now. That we're at a point where And I'm going to have to go plug my computer in because it's telling me low battery power. So, do you mind if I grab my plug real quick? Or should we just, okay.
5 more minutes is all, but I mean, if it's...
I'll be right back.
And while you're running in the background there, it's like, for me, we have to create a north, right? A true north. And what will that be functioning under? But we also need to understand what that true north is. It is going to be unique for a lot of people, but it needs to be conformed enough that everybody can at least understand it. They're like, oh, okay, well, that's just your thing. So if it is, sexuality in the sense of sexual preferences, okay, well, what's your sexual preference? If you're gay, then, I'm probably not going to be somebody of interest, right? Or neither will somebody else be equal to my gender.
All right.
We don't have our true norths. We have now this, this massive confusion that only is going to erode the potential for healthy long-term relationships. How do we accomplish healthy long-term relationships? We have to create some sort of foundation. I'm not saying I have all the answers here. That's one thing about the Maturity Project, but I tell people right away, I don't have all the answers. I just have a structure and a strategy to come up with answers. But everything is so incredibly dynamic. I can't tell you the entirety of it because people like you come in, and most of the time when I talked about physical, to tie this back in, I talk about exercise, weight loss, health, and well-being, but not how do you work from some place that has an impairment and make life work with that, right? It's exposed a whole other area. Of course I could have figured that out, but by when would I come up with that? Because other things kept coming up. Yeah. Right. So that's the beautiful thing about community, is the contribution that comes through it.
It is.
Sexuality, same thing. So anyway, so you were going to say, as far as sexuality?
If I was
talking about where you were at with it was that, where people choose to be and whatever their sexual preferences and their identities are.
I think there's just such an opportunity for people learning and growing there because if we can look at the shifts of when this started happening, and I'm sure there's scientists out there doing it, and there may be some great psychologists working on this, but I mean, when was the shift when people just completely started thinking that they needed to be a completely different gender? I mean, are we not concerned that that's happening so much now, and why? So I think there's a lot to be done I think there's a lot to be said for maturity there and just learning. I'd like to know, certainly I'd love to find out more about it. It's fascinating to me.
Absolutely, and I agree with you completely. It's we have a lot of great thinkers out there, and the consequences are a great way to frame it for the importance, right? Mm-hmm. The consequences are, in your life, if you don't have fulfilling relationships that have value for longevity, you're going to feel like something's missing. Will that take away your overall fulfillment of life? And I'll say yes, because companionship is something that we are hierarchical creatures. We look for how we fit into our society, and then we own our space whenever we feel like we're synchronized with it. Because that's us, that's me. That's part of I'm part of this thing. And if you want to have a meaningful long-term relationship, you're going to have common ground in order to establish that. And right now, what we have is we have this hodgepodge of all kinds of new things that's just thrown into the mix. And even inside of those sections, all of that new information, there's little to no foundation that allows common ground other than you have a common enemy. Mm-hmm. Common enemy is all the people that think otherwise.
Yeah.
We're all part of the same community. And then you get to the point of satisfaction, longevity of those relationships. And I want to see the studies that give us the actual proof in the pudding. How long are people that are in those communities maintaining those relationships?
Right.
On the alternative lifestyles, whenever it comes into the LGBTQ, there is a thing called, what is it called? Lesbian death, bed death? I believe it's called lesbian bed death.
Really?
And what it is it's about, I believe it's a 2-year window, and then a lot of exclusive, monogamous, 2 women relationships where they're lesbians together. After 2 years, their sex life is dead.
Oh.
And it's a phenomenon that occurs specifically to lesbian women. It's not so much in the gay men category, but men have different drivers for physical satisfaction.
Of course. Yeah.
But still, that's something to look into. It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
My thing is like, look, it doesn't need to be absolutely true. My goal is to find out the absolute truths, but I'm following a path to understand something better because I want to understand over be right. Because I'm not as interested in being right. I'm more interested in understanding.
Well, that seems to me what I've taken from the Maturity Project so far is that it's not about necessarily making people or trying to make people more mature or saying I'm more mature than you. It's really about what can we learn from each other. I mean, you interview enough people, you're going to become more immature on certain things. You're going to learn more. You're going to hear different points of view, and that's what I want too. I want to talk to people that are very different than me. I want to know where do they come from. And if it takes, I mean, I'd love to speak with somebody who was transgender or who had decided to be a lesbian after 30 years of being with a man. I mean, I want to know, like, how does it feel? And then I'll be better because of it, right?
Yeah, you can live, like I mentioned on our private call, like I was told that, and it had been said to me that, if you read a book, you can die 1,000 deaths. Right, and it's not to be morbid, by the way, and it may not be the actual quote. It's the way I heard it first.
Right.
It resonated with me because I'm like, I could die 1,000 deaths, but immediately I went to that means I lived 1,000 lives. Now, not 1,000 deaths of torture, but 1,000 lives of a fulfilling experience. And then I realized I could live 1,000,000 lives or die 1,000,000 deaths if I connect with people the right way. Because I can connect with people and get through great, meaningful conversations faster and more impactfully than to reading 1,000,000 books.
Absolutely.
I'd love to read 1,000,000 books.
And the people you'll talk to, it's true stories. So nonfiction is the best to me.
Love it. So with that, that's my whole point with this is like, look, we're just out. My thing is I have a big community driver, but that's not usually the area of maturity I talk much about. So I'd like to explore sexuality more at some other time, maybe in the next conversation with you. And the dynamics of it. Now, that one, by the way, can be interesting.
I know.
It can have a lot of like, hey, we may need an R rating on this one.
We may get a lot of criticism for it too.
Yeah. Well, you know what though, we're going to get criticism.
I'm open to that. I want to talk about it.
You always get criticism no matter what. It's just how well are you known. You're going to get the people that talk, and the people that talk usually, one person complains, 1,000 people appreciate it.
Well, and criticism is also part of maturity. I mean, we have to be criticized in order to, and how am I going to take this? Am I going to take it and change what I'm doing, or was that person just being a complete asshole or troll,
Here's something to add into it, and we'll close on this, and your closing thoughts too. But so what we've done is we've gone the wrong direction with the concept of bullying. What we've done with bullying is we said it shouldn't happen, and we're going to eradicate it. We're going to take it away from people and take away their ability to bully. Well, we're hierarchical creatures. We're never going to do that. We've just given the permission to bully to other people in their own unique ways. So what we've done is that's an error. Right? What we can do to correct it is to show people how to deal with bullying. This is how to deal with it. But how do you deal with it in a mature way? Because if you teach the mature way, you're laying the groundwork for them to grow into that method to make it work for them as well. So whenever I get criticism, then it's just a matter of how do I handle it in a mature way. One of the best ways of resolving criticism is to call it out for what it is.
Yeah.
Like, you're making fun of me because I'm not as good at this as you expect me to be or what you think you would do if you did it. And therefore, it's tear me down because the people that complain are usually the ones that don't do.
Right. For sure.
Complain, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that are like, good job, man, keep going, right?
Oh, of course. Some of the biggest criticisms I get are on the fitness videos, and I'm like, well, that's interesting because I don't see you doing it.
Yes, exactly. Right. And even then, it's like, look, there's so many people that need our help.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, don't criticize me to silence me. Whenever there's so many people that'll benefit from this. But
right. I don't think a lot of people realize what our aim is when we're putting these videos out, and so I just try to look at it that way. They don't understand what I'm doing here, that's the best way to take that, rather than looking at it as a criticism.
Right. And even then, if you want to use the language of the criticism, by all means.
Yeah.
For me, I'm gonna turn it into a term that really works for me, that excites me.
Yeah.
I got something coming, right? Like I do have a hater on, or whatever. I got a disliker on my YouTube videos that likes to pop in. So every once in a while I get a dislike, and I'm like, oh, they're back at it. And it's like, I'm failing forward, man. Give it to me. Let's go. Comment at least. Let me hear something. And I have got one, and I do appreciate it, and it definitely left me with I can do better.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. Even though it was intended to try to, say something to be like, yeah, knock it down a notch, man. You're outside of your league. And I'm like, that's how you get into the league in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
You're invited to the team.
Right.
So, any closing thoughts or anything, Misty? You've been a wonderful pleasure to talk to.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I could go on for hours. I hope we get to do it again. And I just love what you're doing. And I find a lot of value in it. I'm going to share the information with others. I hope other people will follow you and want to become a part of this. And I just really respect what you're doing.
Thank you so much for that. And I respect you for what you're doing as well. We're building a community to make a difference. And the way we're doing that community to make a difference is not a charity approach. It is an inspiration to motivation to development. Don't do it like me necessarily. Do it your way, but we can give you the blueprint of how it works.
Yes.
I want that. I really want that.
Yeah.
Meet my heart, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. You've been such a pleasure. How can people get in touch with you? I'm going to put your details to reach out to you in the description in this video. Anything you can throw out there for them?
Yeah, it's mistycoaches.com. I'm Misty Coaches on all forums: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and those are the only 3 social media that I do besides LinkedIn professionally. So you can find me at Misty Coaches on anything, and my email's misty@mistycoaches.com. So I'd love to just meet new people, just like you. I just like to talk to new people. So even if you're not trying to hire me, I want to talk to you. So reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Misty, for your time. Again, this is the Maturity Project. I'm your host, Chad Everett Brochures, and this has been my wonderful guest, Misty. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Coming in to talk to the subscribers and anybody else that watched the video. So, well, until next time, let's get up to something. Let's get up to it together. And in closing, we grow through what we go through. Yesterday's failures will become tomorrow's success. So, all right. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.
Bye.